and welcome to the Smartist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Peck, the founder of Smartistry, and I'm delighted to be with you for another fantastic episode. On this podcast, we talk about the intersection between creativity, personal finance, and entrepreneurship. And I think one of the most important things that we do is try to look at the artist's life from a holistic perspective. And one of the key components to doing that is for us to look at and be very much in touch with our mental health and well-being as creative people. So, for that reason, and for so many more reasons, I am very delighted to welcome our special guest on today's episode, podcaster, performer, writer, and mental health advocate, Kevin Crispin. So, welcome, Kevin. We're so glad you're here.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I really appreciate it.
I am delighted, and I want to be fully transparent with all of our listeners right off the bat that Kevin and I go way, way, way back to that wonderful institution of higher learning and education. And we were theater majors together, right?
That's right. We, I believe, we're 1 year apart, maybe
Yes,
something like that. And but yes, we were both theater majors and worked on a bunch of shows together and had a good time.
it was a good time. I have very fond memories of you back at that green room. Um, so what I want to do, Kevin, is like talk about your thoughts about mental health and how it connects with us as creative people. And in order to do that, I'd like to start first with your personal story. And if you could just set the stage for us, tell us a little bit about how your life as a creative person got started.
Sure. So, well, let's see here. I've always been sad, and I think that one of the first ways that I dealt with that was that I would do impressions when I was like 3. And I mean, these were not good impressions, but they were impressions nonetheless. And then by the age of 4, I was in a musical about St. Michael the Archangel at the church, in my church. And and then I started getting really interested in performing arts, hence the theater. So I was in shows starting in first grade. I would do that, and then off and on. And then it was really when I got into high school that my first real mentor, his name was Mr. White, was the head of the really underfunded fledgling theater department at my small town high school. And I was able to be in a number of shows over those 4 beautiful years of high school. And when I left, I thought to myself, well, that's it for performing. I'm going to be a movie director.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was originally a film major down there at that prestigious university. And
As was I.
is that really?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Wow, okay. So I did that, and then I got cast in a main stage show there, second semester of freshman year. And I tried to do a double major for like a week of film and theater, and I was like, well, that's not going to work. So I dropped the film and stayed in theater. Then I ended up becoming a professional actor and technician. Did a bunch of summer stock. For anybody who's listening who doesn't know what that means summer theater, which really means work all the time, do show after show after show, never really sleep, drink your weight in alcohol, and don't get paid very much. But man, is it a good time.
That's the dream.
That is the dream. And then I kind of got into writing as a way to try to figure things out, as I'm sure we'll talk about. I've struggled with, pardon me, mental health stuff my whole life. I am diagnosed with OCD. So when people say I'm really OCD about my folders, I usually say, well, I'm really OCD about life. So like all of it. And I've had anxiety problems my whole life, a little bit of depression, but writing has always been an outlet that has helped me understand why I'm feeling what I'm feeling.
So much resonates with what you just said. And certainly, I've talked on this podcast before about my mental health challenges. And I think many of us artists, I'm making broad generalizations, but I'm going to do it. So I think many of us creative people, we feel things so intensely that any mental health struggles or challenges that we have are exacerbated or even like deepened by just our need to our need to process things with so much input. Would you agree?
100%. And, something I didn't say before, but, we feel so much and we have, i.e., emotions. And one of the biggest struggles I've always had is that my emotions become very powerful. And I've heard it be described as reacting versus responding. I have a really hard time responding, especially if I'm in an emotional state, but I'm very good at reacting. Now, 32 years of therapy, all the, exercise, all the good stuff that they say helps. Medication, I've been on medication for 23 years. That helps, right? So it's not as frequent an occurrence, but it starts with what you said, really feeling something. And sometimes that feeling will then tell a story in your mind. And before you realize it, you've told a story that's created a whole world that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, a lot of truth in that. So, to your story, and to your journey, um, you kind of came out of higher education, uh, ready to be a professional, ready to start working as a creative person. And somewhere you and I talked, and you said things kind of changed for you in your belief system about what it what it would mean for you to be an artist. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think it's really exciting to come out of school having majored in theater and then going to make your living at theater. It's like, well, look, see mom and dad, see whomever. By the way, my parents were always supportive. I don't mean to say that, but see, look, I got a degree in it and now I'm doing it. That's all well and good, except for the problem that this country does not take care of their artists. As one of the reasons I think your company is incredible, because it is trying to do exactly what we all should be doing, which is taking care of our artists. Because I don't care who we are or what we believe or what your political viewpoint is. We all need art. We all rely on art every single day. And artists are tradesmen, tradesmen and women. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But, and as you said, and I quote you all the time when you came on my podcast, art is legitimate work, period. And that is exactly right. So I come out of school, I do some summer stock, I do a tour, I do another tour, I'm performing, I'm a technician, all this stuff. Well, that's cool, but when it's your whole life, not just something that you really want to do, it becomes a bit suffocating and it takes away your stability. At least that was my experience. You're on the road, you're staying in the same type of hotels, you eat the same shit. Can I curse?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. You eat the same shit, and you have no stability. I lived out of two bags for a long time. I didn't have a home base. As somebody who is extremely anxious, I started to realize how important it was to me, and how, like art, it was what is it that Stephen King says? He says, life is not a support system for art, it's the other way around. And isn't that the fucking and but talk about one of the great artists. So I started to think about, oh, well, maybe I'm not an artist because this is my whole life. And being a 20 something reactionary person, I reacted all or nothing. So it's like, okay, I'm done with that. Now I'm going to do this. So I went in and I moved to Chicago, and I started doing like retail and temping, and I was like, well, what the hell am I doing? And then I went back out on the road because I was finding meaning in the art, but it still was posing the problems of lack of income, lack of stability, lack of insurance, all of these things. And so I had to step away, and I ended up going into the workforce. Bingo boingo, I ended up growing with a company, and got a new. I was very lucky to be trained a new skill set in project management and things of that nature. And so then art went on the back burner, and my career became forefront. But then you start, as my friend Singh once said to me a long time ago, "Oh, you're not gonna make anything? Well, call me when you want to update me on how your soul's doing," something to that nature. And so, yeah, so um, long story short, now I'm trying very hard once again to be an artist and make my living at it, with a more, I hope, I like to think, a fresher perspective on it, and a more grateful approach to the opportunity to be able to even do this on a day-to-day basis.
I wish and want that for you very, very much. I want to also zero in on the idea of burnout that you're talking about. And I think this will not be a surprise or unfamiliar to anybody that's listening, but I want to say it out loud. The essential challenge of being a creative person in a capitalist society is that not only are you burning the candle at both ends, literally, working and crafting, we'll say it that way, but also you're living in a constant state of existential crisis. And I don't think that that gets spoken about. And I think that the wear and tear on us of living in that constant self doubt and questioning and um, confusion about your worthiness and where you have value is unbelievably detrimental. And I think that there are so many other tradespeople, professionals that never have this sense of existential dread. Maybe there are some. I've seen Mad Men, but like I think about people that like pick a profession and they pursue it and they go and they do it and they climb their ladder and they reach their success and they never have a minute about like what am I doing with my life? They just don't.
Yeah, exactly. And let's start with what you said there too about you go to your job, your 9 to 5, as they say, and then you go do a show at night. That's extremely exhausting. And it got to the point where when I had a quote unquote demanding enough job during the day, I had to put the theater aside. The theater was not paying me. I obviously had to make money, and I was actually getting meaning out of work. Which, hey, to a lot of people who may be listening to this, that's a lucky thing. That's not a given that one gets meaning out of work. But I was getting meaning out of work, and I was able to turn my focus there, and was able to grow there. I think that the existential crises that are always going on is there are days where that meaning slips, and then you delve into the nostalgia, the destroyer of worlds. You think about what your life used to be like, and then you start to question the very positive things in your life then. And then you question your worth as a person because you feel, I'm going to speak, I felt that, well, if I'm not being creative or I'm not doing something that I think is worthwhile, then I am not living a fulfilling life. Now, that's also a very American thing. It's also a very recent thing, right? We used to be an agrarian society. People are like, cool, you need to be up at 4, milk the cows, and we need to, you and your 14 brothers and sisters, we got to go out and make sure the farm doesn't go under so we can eat. So it's all new, but it's still very present and very prescient in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think that the existential crisis that happens if you're not doing the creative or not following the creative pursuits for whatever reason, because you don't feel confident, because you have what you so lovely you called head trash, that shit that says, nah, I can't do that, I shouldn't be doing that, I shouldn't be hosting a podcast, I shouldn't be submitting my writing to be published, I shouldn't be doing any of this. That's a bunch of bullshit. It's not really helpful. So to be somebody who really wants to create, but circumstances of life do not allow you to do that, it creates not only the wear and tear of a day-to-day job and the frustrations and the ups and downs and all that, but it also creates this void of where you feel like you're missing something, but there are not the opportunities to do that.
Yes. Oh, I have a funny story for you that ties directly into this. I've never shared this on this podcast, so
Oh, let's hear it.
um, this is exactly related to what you're talking about. When I was 14, I think I want to say it was 14, the movie Phenomenon came out. Do you remember this movie?
Is that the movie with John Travolta?
Yeah. So this movie's about this like blue collar kind of guy that just shuffling through his life, and then one night he gets struck with lightning or something like that, and he like it opens channels of his brain that he never had access to before, and he suddenly is like able to think more abstract and think about different subjects, and he becomes like this full renaissance man in terms of his pursuits, but he also like connects more deeply with relationships, and he like falls in love. And this is a very sappy kind of mid 90s white privilegey kind of movie. But what happened to me as a 14-year-old high achieving, very intense feeling drama kid is that I had an existential crisis where I felt like I wasn't living up to my potential.
At 14, you had this crisis?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you try being struck by lightning?
I tried everything. um but I think the idea of our potential, especially if you are fortunate like you and I were to grow up with families that were supportive of our artistic pursuits, and we didn't really have limitations in that realm, just the idea that like you can be everything that you want to be. It's the American dream. If you work hard enough, you can have and be everything that your potential is limitless. To me, that idea gave me so much head trash and continues to give me, connect deeply with, what do we call that? What do you call it when you think you're a fraud?
Imposter syndrome?
Thank you. Yeah, that and other head trash.
Call it being Kevin?
Oh man, yeah. Does that resonate with you at all? The potential, like the heaviness of that?
Yes. So of course it does, because it's like potential is kind of limitless, right? And so that is a limitless playground for anxiety, for the head trash to say, you're not doing this. And anxiety is like a virus, okay? Think about COVID. COVID came, we got the vaccines. All of a sudden, it started to morph around the vaccine because it does that. It's not even alive, it does that to find something to live on. Anxiety does the same thing. You feel like you've beat something, and brain goes, the fuck you have. And it comes in and it says, now we're going to worry about it this way. And you're like, well, wait, no. And it does that with the potential. But and another thing that's interesting about potential, another P word is possibility. And when you're 14, you feel like maybe you felt like, I felt like, well, I've got all the time in the world. I got possibilities for days. I have the same amount of time today that I did then, but because of the narrative that we're told about when people are successful, I seem to think something has passed me by just because I have aged, but my possibility has not changed. And so I think when we're nostalgic for something, yes, we're nostalgic for the good times, but I really think we're nostalgic for a time when we feel more comfortable with the possibility or potential that we have in front of us.
Ooh, that was good. Okay, we haven't even made it to the third bullet point yet. No, we're crushing this. Um, okay, so we're talking about very American things right now. We're talking about potential and limitlessness and an open frontier of a playground that is yours to be, claimed. Um, you and I talked before this about the American quality of self-determination. I think that fits in here as well. Does that does that resonate with you, and does that mean something else to you as well?
Well, self-determination is all well and good. It's really easy to jump on a simple hobby horse and then take it and say, "See, I was self-determined, so I did this." But that takes away the complexities of life. And I understand when one is having a conversation or one is trying to get from point A to point B, you have to weed through those complexities. Okay, I think that self-determination, it what it means to me is having the courage to believe enough in yourself and accept the parts of yourself that you don't believe in yet. But that's almost impossible. At least it is for me, because of the head trash, as we call it, because of the voice in my head that tells me I'm nothing. All of these things. But I think self determination does mean that, but it should also mean you, whomever you are, as a person, as a creator, as an artist, you have your beliefs and your morals, and you should be determined to stick to those beliefs and morals, no matter what society says. And I'm going to misquote him, but Emerson says something like, the individual is lashed. Society whips the individual's back. I really fucked that quote up, but it's basically saying to go against the societal norm is to bring about punishment on you. And so it's like, well, I'm being self-determination. And then people are like, yeah, but in this little box, put it in this box, the one that was just sold to me on the commercials during Three's Company.
Specifically Three's Company.
Yes, probably because I watched way too many reruns of that as a kid. And I want that time back. Not going to get it.
The shorts were too short in that time.
Or not short enough. No, I'm just kidding.
um okay, so we're butting up against, we're kind of playing a tug of war right now with our sense of possibility and our sense of our own internal right, and our internal wrong as well. A lot of us, as we're coming up and coming of age as artists, we get the impression, we get told or sold a bill of goods maybe about the lifestyle of being an artist, and that it's, a lazy lifestyle, or, it's not as proactive. Is that something that you encountered?
Thankfully, I don't know if I ever heard the term lazy, because as I was talking about earlier, emotion reaction, I would have got pissed. Some of the hardest working people I know are artists. And and then it's like, sorry, I have to go off that a little bit. So if somebody does call it lazy, lazy as compared to what? As compared to the corporate ladder thing, as compared to filling out a spreadsheet, as compared to, getting up and going to a job that you may not love. I don't know how that is any less lazy than being an artist. And I'm not calling anyone lazy. I don't believe that's my job, nor is it my. I don't. It doesn't matter to me who is lazy and who is not lazy. So I think though that art is looked as a pursuit or a passion project, and it's not looked at a career. And that's why I keep coming back to the quote of yours, which is art is legitimate work. Art is legitimate work. And head trash and society will tell you, no, it isn't. Because why? Because it does not create revenue for a certain group of people. Well, fuck that. Who that doesn't Yes, I understand that's the way the world works to a degree, but it doesn't have to be how you believe, and it doesn't have to guide all of your decisions. So I think artists are the opposite of lazy, because to create is to take energy, and to create is to also not only create, it's to battle self-doubt, it's to put yourself out there, it's to be vulnerable in a world that does not prize vulnerability. So I think artists are heroes. Most of my heroes are artists. because artists tell me they explain life back to me. When I sit and I am just totally overwhelmed with what have you, I go to the artists I love. I read. I listen to music. I what have you, and life is explained back to me. And then I'm like, okay, got it. Moving on.
Yes. And I mean, I think the pandemic is the perfect showcase of how artists are our society's healers. They are our society's advocates. They are, our society's um, comfort and ease. And I mean, gosh, just to be able to put on your favorite song when you're in a bad mood and just, you know, feel your feelings is more powerful than anything I can think of.
And healthy.
And so healthy, and it feels so good, so cathartic. Yeah. We talked, and thank you for resharing my thoughts about art as a legitimate work. And you and I talked about reframing for ourselves and maybe for others the idea of art as a trade, which I think is so important. And it's so funny to me, based on everything we've been talking about, the American way, you know, the American dream, like trades is intrinsically American. So the fact that there's such a strong binary of refusing the arts entrance and access to that, like, respect is so bizarre to me.
True, but again, it's probably, I believe at least, it must be because, well, I think it's a couple things. I think it's because it costs money to make art. It does not necessarily make money. And the other thing is the people, I tend to believe often, those who are very high up in business and who maybe say they're not really into the arts, even though everyone is into the arts because everyone looks around the world, everybody sees creativity wherever they are. They may not be able to do the artistic things the way that artists can. It's kind of like, look, I would love to be able to play guitar well, and I really can't. I mean, I guess if I really, really worked at it, I could, but I don't. And I think it's true of people who are really in the finance world or in another world. Well, I can't do that. So, but guess what? I control the money. So that means not only do I get to call the shots, I get to call the shots on the art that is made. So art is a trade. And the tradesmen, plumbers, your woodworkers, et cetera, et cetera. I have utmost respect for those people because they learn a skill, they're doing something themselves, they're working with their hands, they're using your brain in different ways, they're engaged in different ways every day. It's not the rote, again, 9 to 5 thing. And what other way is there to describe an artist as somebody who is working with their body, working with their hands, working with their mind in different ways every day? With the goal of making things better.
Agreed. And I don't know if this is going to blow your mind as much as it blew my mind. I came across this just this week on Instagram. The idea that art is wealth, and what that meant in the context that I read it is that if we're thinking about an economy, we're thinking about exchange specifically. Like when the craftspeople, the tradespeople, artisans make their goods, they can't necessarily sell them to people who are economically similar to them because of, the cost of building them. But if you think about it in terms of like a hierarchy of spending, the richest people have nothing to buy except art. That is the highest thing they can buy.
Right. And then they just spend more and more money on like NFT, crazy shit. But yes, you're right. Like at the auctions and stuff.
Yeah, and I think about like Mnuchin. Like that dude produced movies.
Yeah, he gave money for movies to be made, I- and Yes, and that art is wealth. That's another thing to think about a lot because it's true, but nobody says that or thinks about it that way because so many people, because of many shortcomings in our society, don't have time to think about it. They're like, I just hope I get paid. Oh my God, I have to get another job. Oh my God, I have to do this. Oh my God, I can't find affordable housing anymore. All of these things.
Right. And I buy my paintings at Kohl's.
Right. Exactly. Right.
I hope we get a sponsorship now.
That's right. Hey, I'll call Bill Cole if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
um okay. So we're going to circle back to your journey specifically. And we've talked a bit about some of the challenges that you felt as you transitioned into the corporate world. One of the things that I thought was interesting that you shared with me was the the difficulty that you had with corporate um, requirements around your image, around facial hair specifically, and what that meant to you. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. And look, I understand both sides of this. Where I had frustration was what does a so during the pandemic, the first year of the pandemic, I grew a pretty big beard. And yeah, it was scraggly and what have you. I I understand that maybe that's not always in the best of um it's not always welcome in the circles that one is working in, but I wasn't hired because of my beard, nor is my beard the thing that's earning the money. And there's like this debate right now as we record, all quote unquote debate. Oh, the dress code in the Senate. Oh, blah 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 blah. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? I really don't know. I mean, what are we gonna? We can go back to long tails, coats, and wigs. I mean, will that be better? What does it matter? So I guess my reaction was was like, oh, I need to trim my beard, and I reacted instead of responding. I got very angry. I went and immediately did it. I just immediately did it, and I felt put upon and all this stuff. I and that was not what was being said to me. What they're saying is, Kevin, you know basically if you invite somebody over to your house, there are your house rules. Well, these are the house rules. Okay, makes sense. I just choose to personally don't believe focusing on things like facial hair or say if somebody's wearing a tie or not really matters in the scheme of anything, whether you're trying to make money, whether you're trying to make art. It doesn't it seems beside the point to me. And it's just kind of a waste of time to even think about.
It's it's a funny rule set that we are all like beholden to, and then nobody likes it. Like there are not many men that I've encountered that wouldn't prefer to not have to shave whenever they want.
Well, yeah, there's and but now to be clear, I mean my beard is pretty intense. There are places that just don't allow facial hair at all, which I don't understand. Like, and even like the New York Yankees still don't allow facial hair, which doesn't make any fucking who gives a shit. It's really crazy. So to be clear, I mean, I was asked something, and in the context of it, it made sense. As a personal belief, I don't see the reason we need to focus on things like facial hair or tie or no tie or what have you.
I don't want to assume anything. A pandemic beard. My hair went through a transition in the pandemic as well. I decided to go a little bit purple, as we all experimented during the pandemic. But I do think that appearance as a reflection of our mental health is so sensitive, and so the lift of a person who is struggling with OCD or ADHD or, autism spectrum, and sensory processing issues. Like this uh, having to manage your appearance to fit a certain standard, especially when you're remote, seems harsh, for lack of a better word. Seems mean.
Yeah, and again, it is harsh. I think my situation was a little more complicated. I was in a pretty high up position, and it wasn't necessarily a remote situation. Even it was, but it wasn't. So basically, what I'm saying is, I think they had every right to say that to me. I took it poorly, and then it made me think a lot about why do we care about these things, and I don't know if I have the answer for that.
That's fair. I had not really given it much thought myself, but that is very interesting. Um, okay. So in your personal journey, you shared a little bit already about um the ways that you second guessed or doubted the path that you were taking. We both have shared a little bit about that. Um, you talked to me about something. I don't want to take the words out of your mouth, but you called it the ever screaming voice of the artist themselves not to go for it. Can you share what that means to you?
Yeah, I think that's fear of failure. I think it's a voice that we all have quietly, loudly, very loudly, and it seems to be more prevalent in artists because of the empathy maybe that they have that sorry, they're more prone to feeling things as you said earlier, and I think when you're prone to feeling things and emotions, you're also going to be prone to judging yourself pretty harshly. And for somebody like me who has OCD, it also it seems it's like a it's not right, but it seems like it's a version of that anxiety that's trying to act as a control. It's like trying to say, well, if I'm harder on you, you'll do better. And so tell me again what I said. It was
So we were talking about how self-doubt shows up in your life, in your creative practice. And the words that you used was you named it. I put it in all in caps, I think. The ever screaming voice of the artist not to go for it.
and it's because well, you look around and you say, why me? Why should I be the one who's doing it? And look, there's 10 other versions of what I'm trying to do. What's the point of making an 11th? I'm not worth it, and it's not worth my time. Or excuse me, nobody's going to give a shit. So it's head trash. It's talking down to yourself, and it's very destructive, and it's very prevalent in life, and it's very uh, prevalent in creative life. And I am in awe of people who are able to, at least on the outside, to say nothing of what's going on inside, plow through that and just continue to work. I've been listening to a lot of Frank Zappa lately. And the thing about Frank Zappa is he had 9 bazillion records because all he did was work. And I think, oh God, I would sit down to do something. Oh, I couldn't focus on it. Or, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Or, oh, somebody could be doing this better. Oh, that. And then nothing would happen, whereas he's written a whole record, right? So there are those people who are just able to, whatever way, continue to just push through. But the self doubts and the ever screaming voice of the artist not to go for it is also, I think, a false safety mechanism to say, see, if you don't go for it, well, then you won't have failed, and then if you won't have failed, you're not a failure.
Ooh, that self-sabotage piece. Yeah. Yeah. So Frank Zappa is somebody whose work seems to be an inspiration to you in terms of prolific output and consistent output. Are there other artists, or is there a specific artist who really inspires you? Maybe I'm talking less about their content and more about their approach or their their career in general that really inspires and motivates you?
Oh, yes. The Beatles, Bob Dylan, Stephen King, who we mentioned earlier, David Foster Wallace, Marilyn Robinson, um, Bill Hicks, of course, on and on. And it's for each one of them for different reasons. I don't know if you wanted me to go into that or maybe pick one.
Well, who's your favorite and why? Tell me at least one.
At the well, I'll say at the root of all who I am and what I want to be are the Beatles, okay? But I will say that I believe the greatest American artist we've ever had is Dylan. And one of the reasons is one, he explains life back to me better than any other artist I've ever come across. Two, he constantly changes and does not give a fuck about what you want or don't want him to do. It's about what he wants to do. He defies expectations. He did so many things first. He is a groundbreaker. He's an electronic Rimbaud. And that's just the fucking 60s, right? And you just go on and on. And it's the fact that he reinvents himself, and not only in the music, right? He's a prolific painter. He's a prolific metal sculptor. He hosted a radio show called Theme Time Radio Hour, which is hilarious. He's written books. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature. He's won pretty much every award you can think of, and he just never stops. So there is the prolific part, but it's also the quality of the art. Now, there's some bad Dylan, of course, but the quality of the art and the influence of the art and what it did and how, for example, if you take a song like Only a Pawn in Their Game, which is came out on his third record, The Times They Are Changin', which was released when he was about 22. Listen to that song today, Only a Pawn in Their Game, and you're like, yep, that still explains everything perfectly. Just something like that. You know, how does one do that? I don't know.
Yeah, he's tapped into a different frequency.
That is for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah. And I have to say this because it's the Smartest Podcast, but feel free to Google his net worth because the man does not work for free.
No, he doesn't. And he sold his, what did he sell his,
Like catalog, right?
300 million or something like that? 400 million? 300 million, I think, is what he sold his catalog for. Not bad. Not bad.
Like, that's just a little chump change to him. Just a little. He could buy some art with that. Um, um, yeah, I mean, I do like to beat this horse a lot, which is that many of the artists that we go to, I will say Springsteen because he's my favorite, but he's right in the same team, I think, with Dylan, that are known for being of the people, that are known for speaking the truth to power, that are known for being incorruptible in terms of their values. Like, these people make money. They make money with their art and they're not ashamed about it. They're not embarrassed about it. And they understand the intrinsic value of what they're giving to others. So I just want to say that again because I feel I must.
Yeah, because not only is art wealth, but authenticity is wealth. And authenticity will sell as long as we're selling things. And when we're done buying and selling things, authenticity will be embraced.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about where you are in your journey today. Tell us about your podcast, Sad Times. I want to tell our audience why you started it, where you're at with it, everything.
Great. Yes. So Sad Times is, as you said, a podcast. It's a podcast where every week we have a kind and generous guest, of which you were one. Thank you. Who comes on and talks about times when they were upset, sad, angry, overwhelmed, went through a really difficult time in their life, how they acted, how the people around them acted. And the goal is not to solve it, nor is it to diagnose it, nor is it to judge it. It is simply to allow the story to be told, because I believe that we all go through this weird shit. We go through very difficult times, but we don't talk about it very much for whatever reason. When there's many reasons we could get into. But if we talked about it more and then we open up just a little bit more, then we might feel less alone. And I think that's, what is art trying to do? It's trying to do many things. One of the things is to help us feel less alone. And if we can all tell our stories and say, hey, this is when I wasn't at my best, or hey, this is when I went through some really hard times, people could be listening at home and say, oh, oh God, I thought I was the only one who thought that, or I thought I was the only one with that experience. I'm now less alone. I'm now more prone to be opening up about my stuff so that maybe more empathy can be happening around the world. So, Sad Times came out of a one-man show that I did, wrote and produced and performed in 2017 called Invisible Now, which was a show about all the weird, crazy stuff I've been afraid of. And, all my hang-ups and things, because it was about a 50-minute show, and kind of at the end, it was just like, hey, this is my stuff. I hope it helps you feel less alone, and I hope you are able to go out and say a little bit about your stuff to somebody else. So Sad Times is bringing guests on. Now, yeah, some of this stuff is very difficult to talk about, but we always, when applicable, we try to put levity and humor around it. My one-man show, I had one rule, which was, I had to talk about other people in my life. The only person who was allowed to look like a fool was me. It wasn't me coming up there being like, hey, this person did that. No. And so that's what Sad Times is.
It's such a beautiful premise. And thank you for creating that space. You do it with such tenderness, such good humor. You've created such a comfortable place for people to come. Gosh, when I reached out to you and said, I got something to say, you made me feel so at ease to talk about stuff that was really hard for me. Um, One of the benefits that I think we get as artists from listening to your podcast and from doing that work in our communities and in our relationships is, we start replacing some of that intimacy that we've been craving as human beings and we've been missing, sharing what's really going on for us. And that to me is hard because of our conditioning. It's hard because of our fear and being vulnerable, but it's a muscle, and if we practice, we get better. And you've created a space where we can hear people practicing. It kind of gives us permission to practice.
Well, thank you very much. That's an extremely kind thing of you to say, and I appreciate it very much. And to the observation you said about making you feel comfortable telling these things. I think it's important to state too that the main rule of Sad Times is the guest chooses 100% about what we talk about. It's not some sort of come on here and I'm going to pepper you with questions about whatever I want. It's you submit, you come on, you tell me what you want to talk about. I make an outline and then we talk about those things. Because not everybody wants to share everything, right? Of course not. But there are things that people are willing to share, and I don't ever want people to be on that show and ever feel uncomfortable or like they're going to be quote unquote ambushed or anything like that.
I'm so glad. I'm very grateful for you for keeping on with it and doing the hard work that you're doing. So don't stop. We need you.
Okay. All right.
Tell me about healing the wrist and this piece that you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote a motivational speech about anxiety and depression in the workplace. And I called it Healing the Wrist because one of my favorite things that I've heard last number of years is we're having a conversation about mental health in this country. But are we? I don't think we are. I think we're saying, oh, okay, now we know it exists. But hey, look over there is the EAP, or look over there. We treat mental health the same way we treat a broken wrist. And what I mean by that is, if I were, we're recording here and I was like, oh, I need to get up and grab my bottle of water, and I tripped, I fell, I broke my wrist. Very clear set of next steps here. I'm probably either going to get an ambulance or get a ride to the hospital, get an x-ray, have the wrist set, have the cast put on 6 to 8, 12 weeks, however long it is. I come back, cast off, bone healed, good to go, done. We treat mental health that way, but there is no quick solvable way to do it. It's a process that you manage. And so I call it healing the wrist because there is a way to continue to work towards healing of mental health challenges in the workplace. And I firmly believe if you take the time, if you take the time to build a workplace that has a culture where people feel heard, and this is not to say that you do not expect people to work and to do good work and to continue to do good work, but to allow a safe space for people to say, you know what, today I'm really struggling with this, and here's why. At my last job, was a high stress job, and one of the reasons I was able to continue to do well in the role was because my boss would go on walks with me as I was kind of losing my mind. And that took 20 minutes where we weren't being quote unquote productive, whatever it is. That just made me want to work harder. It made me more comfortable, and it made me be more confident. And really, I think we all need to be confident in order to do our best work. So Healing the Wrist is a speech where I kind of tell my story a little bit, and I talk about my feelings about what I call the voice, the anxiety, a world. So the voice we've talked about, that's basically head trash. The anxiety is the feelings that you get of unease. And then a world is the world that you create within 4 seconds of having that voice thought, where all of a sudden, oh my God, I've been fired and I'm going to be marched out of here, when all it was your boss said, hey, I need to talk to you. So Healing the Wrist is about actually having a further conversation about mental health in the workplace and ways to go about it.
It's awesome. I love it. And you've done it with such good humor again. And I think it's going to really help a lot of people. I want to see it get out there to as many people as possible, for sure.
Thank you. I do too.
So, with the little bit of time we have left, Kevin, we have a tradition on the Smartist Podcast, which is called the Hot Seat, the Artist Hot Seat. And what we're doing with this, there's no right or wrong answer. This is designed to create a chorus of voices from lived experience so that we can understand what each other is thinking and feeling about finance as creative people. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You can answer as little, as much, as you want, but it's whatever you want it to be. Okay, you ready?
Let's do it.
How would you characterize your current relationship with money, and has it always been that way?
I would characterize it as I need it in order to live in the society in which we find ourselves, and I focus far too much on saving it as opposed to investing it. Right, so I've had to make that change. I spent a number of years where I had like $70 to my name, and I would walk down the street and I'd be like, what if I get hit by a bus and I don't have insurance, what am I going to do? So the moment I had any sort of disposable income, I started saving it, and I saved it obsessively. And so it's about making money go as far as possible. And I believe that money is the closest thing that we have to being able to manipulate time. Money, if you have a lot of money or wealth or whatever, or enough money, you can have a little more say on how your time is spent. And that's all we really have.
If you were to describe your financial habits, perhaps a little bit more than you just did, how would you characterize them?
Saving and doing weird things like, oh, I need some dental floss. Well, I'm not going to pay $2 for dental floss. Oh, but look, there's a book about the history of political thought that I'm never going to read, but here's $60. I'll buy that. So weird things that I will and won't spend money on when it comes to saving. So Also, I would say in high stress situations, I turn to retail therapy in a big way, especially if I have a steady income. Where I was like, oh, I think I'm going to collect vinyl. What? Or I think I'm going to collect Criterion Collection Blu-rays. What? You know. So I would say that my habit is if I'm stressed out and I have the means, I go to retail therapy.
The next question might be related to that. What is your biggest area of financial or lifestyle struggle?
I think it's I never really learned about investing. I mean, I did, but I never. I spent so much time with no money that it's hard for me to the variability. Yes, variability of investments always scares me. Even though in the end, you're gonna make your money back almost always. But if you're not too, if you're not too risky, right, you're going to make your money back. So I would say that is my struggle, is that I have not done enough of using my money, whatever little I have of it, to quote make money.
I would be remiss if I did not say that Smartistry offers a investing 101 digital class that is geared specifically toward variable income earners. So, just putting that out there.
I think that is a wonderful thing that you've put in the world, and it's something I need to look into.
Are you or have you been able to support yourself or your household financially with your creative work?
I have, not as of late as I'm trying to ramp up, but those years as an actor, that was how I made my money, and that's how I paid my bills. So yes, I definitely have.
What's your vision of a perfect work life balance for your future, and what do you think it would take to get there?
Work life balance is it's when you say a word like 15 times and then it's like you don't even know what it means anymore. Exactly. Work life balance is like that to me. So I would say that the perfect vision of my work life balance is really a perfect balance of meaning coming from the effort that I'm putting in.
So the second part of the question is, what do you think it would take to get there?
What would it take to get there? It would take a continuing efforts to silence the ever screaming voice of the artist, not to go for it. It would take continuing kindness to myself and others. Kindness is, to me, the only thing that makes sense 100% of the time. Only time I can think it doesn't make sense is if you're a mother protecting her children. That's the only time I can think that it might not make sense. So kindness and getting past the self doubts and giving myself grace.
What is the most valuable lesson you've learned about personal finance in your career?
Probably just that I don't know how to do it in practice, and that's why I'm going to check out your class. But that there is a way to make your quote unquote make your money work for you, which is I don't know, kind of a weird thing to say, but no matter if you have a little or a lot, there's a way to make it work for you, as it were.
Okay, the last thing is our speed round. So this is like word association. Okay. So what's been your experience with savings?
Helpful.
Debt?
I've had very little debt, so I would say lucky.
Health insurance?
Evil.
Life insurance?
In my situation, not as necessary because I have no children. But if were I to have any children, I would say necessary evil.
And financial planners?
I think they are powerful resource as long and that we can all be financial planners.
Love that. I love that. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I can't believe the ground that we covered. So, with the last couple minutes or two, tell us what's next for you, Kevin. Where can our audience find you? Website, all that good stuff.
Sure, thank you. So, what's next for me is I'm going to continue producing Sad Times with our mutual friend, the great Brent. And you can find everything about Sad Times at our website, sadtimespodcast.com. If you search Sad Times in Facebook, you'll see us there. We have a group. We'd love to have you come and join. And then on Instagram, it's at Sad Times Podcast. So, and the Sad Times Podcast itself can be found wherever you get your podcasts, as they say, including Amazon Music. Search it. It's the one with the black and white logo with it's like a round circle face, and there's an X and a heart for the eyes, and then the word happy with a line crossed out, and that's the logo. So we release every Tuesday, and at sadtimespodcast.com, there is a form you can fill out to be a guest, and I will reach out to you. And again, it's 100% about what you want to talk about. So I'm going to be focusing on that. I'm going to be hopefully working with you on some healing the wrist related things that we discussed. I hope to continue to write, and personally, I just hope that I'm able to be a little nicer to myself each day. I tend to fail a lot at that, but I'm doing better at saying it's okay that I fail. I'll try again tomorrow. And so I think, and I have a Substack that I may or may not release one of these days. But I think the main place to find me and listen to the show and all that good stuff is sadtimespodcast.com. Please come, subscribe, and listen. And if you'd like to come on the show, please come out, fill out the form. I would love to hear you and love to hear your story.
Everyone go listen to Sad Times. It's incredible. Kevin Crispin, thank you so much. You're a delight.
Thank you, as are you.
A gentleman and a scholar.
Well, I do have a theater degree, so I guess I am a scholar.
That's right. That's right. And everyone, thanks.
Thank you so much. And I have to say this real fast. Smartistry is a wonderful idea. It's wonderful work that you're doing because art is legitimate work, and artists deserve to have the resources that you are attempting to bring them. So kudos to you and your company, and I'm so honored to be on this show. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.